how you organize and align stake support is a real challenge around blockchain. And there are some gaps in the ecosystem. What we're able to do is to launch some leadership forums, roundtables, that we work with some of our leaders, working with the Boston Blockchain Association and others, to kind of tee up the question, what can the state do? I think that our main theory was awareness was an important element to really supporting growth in this sector. Your average citizen doesn't know what blockchain is or know what it can mean to the economy. So we actually commissioned an education campaign to help municipalities try to understand what blockchain could mean to them with an ambition to see if maybe someone wanted to adopt it. Interestingly enough, we learned in that process that the public sector, and this is my experience elsewhere, is oftentimes the last adopter of new technologies. They're not the first ones to take the risks. The commercial enterprises do that first. We've seen a lot of that up here already. And so we educated folks, but we didn't have much uptake before the COVID. And really create a place in a community like this that can be a keynote in supporting growth in this sector. And so that's where we come to the table today. Kind of excited about the bit of their story. I think that's as important an element of the program as the question and answers. Help us out to understand what it means to you. And I'll let you go first because I know that you probably shared some of your insights through the course of the day. But this is your opportunity to just really tell us how did you get involved and why is this important to you?
Great. Thanks, Pat. So I hadn't really personally delved into it. So when we launched Cubic in 2019, we set about supporting three parts of technology: financial, government, and civic. We were looking to support entrepreneurs building businesses around those verticals. It wasn't until I realized there was an opportunity to support the blockchain ecosystem before I met Pat in Massachusetts Technology Collaborative. So, not really a plug, this is a true story. So, in January of 2020, the organization had launched an education series for municipal elected leaders to try to give them ideas and understanding of what potential blockchain deployments could look like within cities and towns. So it sort of led into my public hat. And we said, oh, this is really interesting in what it could do for a potential city in terms of licensing opportunities, trying to increase or better serve residents in any way through different operational measures, through adoption of blockchain technology. But we started thinking a little bit further into other concepts. But through that course alone, I had the chance to get to know more parts of the ecosystem. So started participating in a blockchain leadership development, workforce development group, and got to know the local industry players and local capital providers, some of the founders in the area, and we realized that there was in fact an opportunity to support the ecosystem. And so it was through 2020 into 2021 that we started banging the drum and looking at what we're trying to do. We're trying to spread entrepreneurship and innovation south of Boston, specifically from Quincy. It's a global effort that's headquartered here, and we started searching for partners, which at first bited the apple. We were able to raise a little bit of money from Castellan Ventures and from Algorand and from Nutter to host a blockchain-focused startup competition. It was heavily marketed. We ended up having about 70 applicants from around the world, which was really cool to meet a whole bunch of founders from around the world and hear what they're up to. We culled that down to 7 participants. We had a final pitch night in May of 2021. And Nick Carter is going to be here tomorrow as a judge. Sean Ford from Algorand was a judge, as well as Josh French, who's a partner at Nutter. And it was really on the back end of that just through that sort of pathway of relationship development, Algorand had suggested that we could explore ecosystem development, helping to create and support companies that would operate on their protocol. And I just was catching up with Pat, and I said, hey Pat, we kind of have this opportunity. He said, why don't you apply for this grant? So we spent the next year arranging what became a first-of-a-kind public-private partnership to support really the creation of a conceptual R&D and commercialization hub to develop blockchain concepts from scratch, invest in them, and then support them through our Cubic ecosystem. So it's been, we follow the thread, sort of opportunistically, but it's led to this whole really great concept that is going to set the groundwork for years to come for us.
Excellent. Ian, thank you. And I have to tell you, in our business, we work with multiple clusters, from fintech to robotics to quantum. And one of the things that we look for when we engage in an ecosystem is what I call the real champions of an initiative. Because the state is not the agent that's going to make the difference at the end of the day. It's the energy that migrates around it. And I think we're very fortunate to have Ian and John and his team really stepping up and playing their role. And we're also grateful for the megaphone and the support the Boston Blockchain Association is doing to really educate and create exposure to what needs to be done in the Commonwealth. And so now as I turn to our next two guests, I have to tell you that our work collectively is nowhere. Does it not resonate with our public sector? Policy leaders who fundamentally understand and are really geared toward a solutions approach from a policy point of view to help everyone achieve their ambitions on the landscape. So I'd like to start out with Chairman Josh Cutler, who is co-chair of the House Blockchain Association and chairman of the Education and Workforce Committee in the House. Josh, how did it come to you?
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Josh Cutler. I'm a South Shore guy, so I appreciate that we're here in Quincy. I have the pleasure of representing the 6th Plymouth District, including part of the towns of Marshfield, Duxbury, Pembroke, Hanson, and Halifax. And as Pat said, I'm the co-chair of the Labor and Workforce Development Committee, and I also have the privilege of working with Kate here as co-chair of the House Blockchain Technology Caucus. Since we're here in Quincy, I'd be remiss not to thank and acknowledge our great colleagues in the House, Representative Bruce Ayers, Representative Taki Chang, who represent part of Quincy, work with Ian in his other hat, who does such a good job. And of course, Speaker Mariano, who's the leader of the House and is a tremendous public servant and someone I really look up to and respect. So really grateful to them and our Quincy team, whom we work so closely with. As well, we're really grateful to the Baker Fluid Administration, Mass Tech, and Pat and everyone and his team who's been so generous with time and expertise to help us in our. I'll admit myself, Kate is a little more knowledgeable as a newbie learning here. Been very generous with his time and talents. So just briefly, Pat, so I think Ronald Reagan said it well. We're here from the government and we're here to help. And I said it as a joke, but we're trying to change attitudes and perceptions a little bit, and we realize that the private sector is much further ahead in this cutting technology as it is oftentimes with other new sectors. And so we want to make sure as policymakers we're making smart decisions about blockchain, and that we're not kind of rushing to judgment and making ill-advised decisions. And so that's something Kate and I have been working on through creating our caucus was sort of our first step. Kate has a good piece of legislation that she's been championing that we're working on. Myself as chair of the Labor and Workforce Development Committee, really try to look at this through a workforce lens, knowing that all of you great folks here are doing such creative things. You're going to need to hire people. You're going to need, if you're successful, you're going to grow, and you're going to need to attract new talent. And we want to make sure that here in Massachusetts we have that pipeline of skilled workers to fill those growing jobs that we expect and hope will be here. So that's my role. I'm really excited to be here. Looking forward to kind of sharing some of that, but also hearing from all of you. We're looking to really learn. And to answer your question, Pat, all my good ideas come from my constituents. People, literally, I had a constituent from Duxbury who reached out to me to talk about Bitcoin back in.
Thanks, Pat, and nice to see everybody. Kate Lippert here, and I'm the state representative for the 32nd Middlesex District, which is Melrose, Wakefield, Malden. I'm the state's first COVID rep. I was sworn in March 2020, about a week after the state of emergency was declared. So I'm pretty new in this role. I come from a background as a 7th grade public school teacher in Atlanta, then went to law school and practiced in education law and policy for more than a decade, including at the Executive Office of Education here in Massachusetts. So when it came time to start thinking about the bills that I would file in this current legislative session, my first full session, I was sort of listening to the news and picking up on this thing called blockchain. My background is not substantively editing and updating your statutory frameworks to invite in this industry and support the ecosystem. So as somebody who doesn't come from this space, I thought, well, I like this approach of a commission, something that we stand up to teach us, to inform legislators and policymakers about what are the appropriate ways in which to foster support for a driver of economic growth, of workforce development in our state. So I filed a bill in January of 2021 that would create that type of commission with a cross-sector approach, people from the industry, people from the legislature, and branch officials to meet quarterly and prepare a report for folks like Josh and me to consider as we think about how we want to fund initiatives like Mass Collaborative and the grant making that it can provide, as well as any updates that we need within our own framework for the types of services that we're providing at a government level, or things that we want to be mindful of in terms of ensuring there's regulatory consistency and a sense of understanding of what type of playing field we have here in Massachusetts, particularly as Congress continues to sort of work its way through this. We sometimes see state legislatures, although we move slowly, move a little bit more quickly than maybe the federal government can do. Came to me and said, would you be interested in a House Blockchain Technology Caucus? We can start meeting monthly and inviting in speakers. We've had Mass Collaborative come in, Boston Blockchain Association, out of Boston Fed, MIT, so across, range of people, which has been really great and really necessary. There are 160 reps. There are 40 senators. I'm probably about the median age. And when I thought file this bill, I started asking some of my colleagues, have you ever heard of blockchain technology, including some younger than I am? And 2 of 1, everyone said no. Then when I showed up at the Melrose Middle School for a government day with the civics teachers and started talking through some of my bills that I had filed and asking the kids if they had heard anything about data privacy and, a number of rows of hands. How about cryptocurrency and blockchain technology? Everyone raised their hand. So, I'm always thinking about what is the economy we're preparing our students for, what types of jobs are going to be really meaningful to them, ways in which they can take their passion and apply it in ways that, to the point of this conversation, are good for the Commonwealth. And so it's been a pleasure to get to learn more about this through a lot of conversations with people here in this room and elsewhere, and glad to continue to deepen my knowledge of it as we prepare for our next legislative session, when I anticipate that the caucus might put forward some bills as well to really continue to drive in this area.
Excellent. Thank you, Kate. And Sam Nathan, Vice Chair of the Boston Blockchain Association. We had a little prep call, very brief, last night, and I can tell you that Sam's thought hard about economies and how to have an impact leveraging this technology. So Sam, for now, tell us how you got involved in blockchain and why it's important to you.
Yeah, so my background in technology professionally was in distributed systems and decentralized data sets. And that lent itself towards kind of 2 primary areas of research and business, being artificial intelligence and blockchain. So we went into the financial markets world, developing AI products for high finance firms. And at the same time, I was experimenting with blockchain very kind of early on as a side sort of thing, because it was a continuation of systems that I was already familiar with that pre-exist blockchain, distributed systems, distributed databases, consensus algorithms, etc. But blockchain added this one extra element that was relevant to the area of my career at the time, finance, which was transactionality. I mean, there was a different sense in the technical space of what transactionality means when you're dealing with systems talking to each other, but there really wasn't this kind of financial aspect of transactionality as what you would consider to be information related to each other in a database or in some sort of data set.
Yeah.
So this kind of changed the dynamic of what you could build with these kind of network systems, and that fascinated me. So I read Satoshi's white paper in late 2011. I've been a researcher in this space for over 10 years, My primary focus has been on the commercial end, financial markets infrastructure, and on the more personal side, it's been around both civic engagement and digital identity. So personal information, data privacy, that sort of stuff. So I've worked with not just the technology as sort of a systems architect, but I've got extensive experience. I initially went into technology through the user experience side of things. So I did business process analysis, business logic analysis, trying to figure out how information and decision is made with technology before I started doing deep dives into the actual computer science side of things. So as a result, a lot of my research, both with academic institutions and with startups, has been around the application of the technology, when it is relevant to apply, when it is not relevant to apply, the relative maturity of both industry to adopt, as well as the technology to be adopted. So my hope for the future in Massachusetts and broader is that we can kind of carve a way forward that not just economic development in the sense of private enterprises using blockchain to therefore benefit the citizens. I really want to see a merging of information and services in cooperation between government services and programs and private industry services and programs at a digital level. So I see blockchain as this fourth revolution of sort of digitization of business. And I really think that the way that this is sort of democratizing a lot of secure technologies and multi-party interaction, I think was something that was mentioned on the call here today. There is now an opportunity for government to start having open source code, open source transparent processes for internal decision-making around applications, form filings, all the bureaucracy that people find opaque about government can now be not only made transparent, but self-hostable. There isn't going to be an over-reliance on these proprietary private systems.
Yeah, excellent, Sam, thank you. And I have to tell you, having been in economic development now for more years than I care to admit, going into our 6th administration, many times I find, building on your point, that the technology is almost the easy part. It's changing cultures, changing patterns that is a real challenge. And the notion of open source, I think, has real resonance in the public sector. I know we've worked very closely with Boston University, both on their open cloud initiative that we put $1 million in about 10 years ago. We're working with them on a technology called multi-party computation technology so that folks can mine information without taking custody of data sets and not compromising any confidentiality in it and get insights that inform your enterprise. That has a blockchain application to it.
It's related cryptography.
And so as we think about our work and how we organize, this is not a traditional cluster initiative. This blockchain's embedded in all these different uses and applications. And we do think that it's as transformational as the internet was 20 years ago. And so with that, I just want to start with Ian with the question, just from an global economic point of view, what it means to economies, what it means to our society going forward. Ian, what are your thoughts? What can we anticipate in the way of blockchain changing our world?
Yeah, from an economic development and industrial, growth perspective, we're excited to, one, enable the conceptualization, research and development process that will guide toward business plan development and then commercialization or sort of seed funding. So, the model for us has been, we've proven out the incubator, we've been able to identify founders, work with them, help them grow, identify capital sources for them, and now we're going to apply that lens to this blockchain opportunity. We look at it a number of ways, and I think it's going to continue to gel. But
we're doing this in Quincy because I live here, I'm on the city council here, I've got sort of these two hats, and I see an opportunity to give a place like Quincy a new industrial shine that it hasn't had in a number of years. You know, we see tons of stuff going on in other parts of the Greater Boston area, but with the economic development that has taken place in the form of real estate here, it needs a complement, which is job creation, to support that growth, right? You need people to live, work, and play in these areas in order to support that economic activity. So we look at it pretty holistically, and then we also look at it from a partnership engagement perspective, where we have a great relationship with the city, and we want to explore deploying blockchain technology in the city to see how it works, to see how it can operate more effectively and efficiently. That blockchain has real-world use cases for regular people, because right now, outside of most of the people who are sitting in this room, it's pretty esoteric. People don't understand it. Just like examples were made earlier, people don't understand how the internet really works or how MasterCard Visa processes works. But provide a value proposition for small and medium enterprises to either provide a better service for their customers, maybe help them with better financial processing that reduces their cost burden in the normal course of business, but real world problems that touch real people that they can understand what's going on. So, I start off by saying that this is something that we would
you participated, our committee had a hearing on a bill that Kate and I worked on together to create, to work on the workforce issues that we talked about, creating a trust fund to be administered by a Commonwealth Corporation, directing some of our state partners to look at the blockchain technology field and making sure we're aligning our certifications, our curriculum and incentives in the same kind of high demand jobs we anticipate and know we're going to be there. So creating opportunities, enterprise funds, so that when there's funding available, we can put that towards the great folks at Mass Tech to then get out to the folks like yourselves that can really make it, can power that and make it work. So that's just one lens, I think, from a stepping back point of view, and Kate can probably speak to this better, but I think our first step is first, do no harm. We want to make sure state government is welcoming, and I know that that's not always been the feeling. We want to make sure we're kind of changing that dynamic and letting people like yourselves and everyone know that we really welcome and embrace this and want Massachusetts to continue to leverage its natural assets that we have. We have really smart people, we have great institutions, we have the high-tech sector, and so we want to make sure we're encouraging that. So that's sort of the number one, I think, goal that we have. Also, it's about educating our colleagues and making sure people kind of understand what this is about. I'm new to this. We're all new to this a little bit, especially in the State House. I mean, when I first started, we didn't have Wi-Fi, so we are a little slow to sometimes adapt to technology.
I didn't know that.
Yes, well, yikes. Yikes, exactly.
Is it up the Great Hall?
I have to bring in a hotspot, and that's the only way I could do it. But no, so things are changing. That's the good news, and and we're delighted to have new colleagues like Kate who bring a lot of energy and really expertise in this. So, I think that's kind of our goal. I would just say we also are looking and we're open to ideas. We want to come up with sort of a demonstration project, a pilot initiative that we could see involving the the public sector to kind of show, like, proof of work, to use an analogy, that we could come up with, on a small scale to kind of demonstrate how blockchain technology could be, useful.
I think that's
a big government. So we'd love to hear some ideas. We're kind of in the drafting stage now.
That's a great conversation for us to follow up on, how to demonstrate something. Replica Garabedian, fill us in. What are you seeing, both on the talent side, the regulatory side? You really took a scan of the landscape here. What are our challenges?
Well, just to build on what Chair Cutler was saying, I think it's both, we're looking for suggestions from partners around pilot programs, which is exactly what the bill that we filed would do. It would enable a 2-year pilot program operated out of the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development to support programming at community colleges, both tech schools, career centers, to support professionals who are really interested in skilling up in this field and being prepared to support a larger ecosystem. And we do have a lot of those natural resources, including in our financial services industry. I think the other thing that I'm interested in and that I've been exploring both with colleagues here in Massachusetts and then in other states that have legislated in this space is whether there are any barriers to entry that are really problematic from our statutes. I haven't heard that in any conversation, but that's something I'm always curious to know more about. I was just reading an article this week that was talking about how Congress is working on, some legislation, likely won't happen this session, so I'm sure they'll turn attention to it again when they reconstitute, but that states, meanwhile, are sort of moving more aggressively around licensing, for example, of stablecoin companies and certain requirements that, they need to put in place to be able to operate in the state. I don't know what the field feels like about that. I think regulatory certainty is sort of important, and we don't want to race to the bottom. We want to sort of, a race to the top to demonstrate, who is really valuable and creating value in our communities as well. So it's sort of a combination of where can we demonstrate promise and the real value here. Are there impediments that are preventing Massachusetts and Boston and Quincy from really being known as an international leader in this space? And are there problematic things that we need to address at a state level as well?
Excellent. Sam, you shared some thoughts yesterday on that very topic. What is this? What are some of the constraints that you see in the ecosystem and ways in which you think about the path forward for the adoption of blockchain technology?
So I actually like to address that by going through some of the points that were made here. First off, you talked about secure multi-party computation. Mm-hmm. And that's related to a piece of technology that's part of kind of a lot of the cryptographic side of innovation that's been happening in the blockchain space, and called zero-knowledge proofs. And one thing that I think is key for people to take away is that blockchain, as a term for the industry, is actually a whole host of different technologies that have different properties and different utility that you can compose to have different functionality in different systems. Right. It's really, people have been using it in a bundled term, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. Yeah. And in the same way, when you're talking about skilling up people in industry, transactionality is interesting, and it did start for Bitcoin and the whole functional revolution, but a lot of the emergent cryptography that's come from this space has applications far beyond financial. Mm-hmm. So the actual just fintech, which is primarily everyone here who deals with blockchain is probably seeing, cryptocurrency and NFTs and digital assets and things that are supposed to be, quote, have value or tokenized value associated with them, financial applications. That's probably going to be 10%, maybe 20% of what blockchain will actually be doing in 20 years' time. Yeah. And eventually, when we get to that point, hopefully we'll be dealing with a situation where, in the same way that people right now don't talk about, is your industry or your product or your company TCP/IP ready? Do you have a domain name? Like, those are things that are not really critical. Talking about blockchain as part of your product stack, your technology stack, is going to be just as kind of in the background rather than the forefront. But we are in such a nascent space right now, both on the technology side and the adoption side, that the only thing that we're really dealing with in terms of regulation is just the financial services use cases.
Right.
So if we're just tackling those, that's such a highly regulated space. There's a lot of friction with this kind of disrupt and innovative mentality that's emerged from not just the Silicon Valley philosophy, but a lot of this sort of libertarian crypto-anarchist rub against the grain philosophy that is this blockchain innovation ecosystem. And so they're kind of at odds with each other and not really willing to learn enough of the language or terminology or connotated differences between definitions between each other to find some sort of middle ground.
Yeah.
Regulation is really all about process and auditability, and can the regulators have transparency into these systems as they are right now? And blockchain is changing the methodology of how these processes might be done internally or between participants in a way that changes the transparency dynamic. Sometimes it makes it irrelevant that it's non-transparent. Sometimes it makes it transparent to a degree that the technology isn't supportive of privacy considerations that the industry wants or the regulators want. So there really needs to be much more of an open dialogue around, instead of mandating at a regulatory level processes, you are figuring out ways to test whether or not these new methods and new processes that blockchain is producing are an analog or able to produce the same outcome and follow the same intention that the regulatory rules outline.
No question. I would proffer that the way to move the needle on that is really through pilot projects. It's going to be very hard for us to change the overarching structure that runs commerce, runs government, runs just exactly what you're talking about. But if you can take and demonstrate this transformation, we're actually trying to start one up right now in the area of digital health to see if we can leverage these technologies to access the healthcare system. To do it in a way in which the legacy ways in which the healthcare industry looks at the technology turns upside down because the technologies themselves redefine the problem. So I think that's the way to go. Think if you can come up with an answer. Let's set aside the financial world. If you were to recommend one application for blockchain that is doable, achievable in the near term, that you think would be a good application to consider in this moment in time, Sam, what would yours be? One sentence, one.
Civic oriented?
I'll give one. I'd call it like smart contracts. What are the applications that you think can get some traction in the ecosystem within our lifetimes around leveraging blockchain? We're seeing it happen in financial sector.
Yeah.
What's the next one?
So I think the number one problem for finding like low-hanging fruit applications
That's exactly right.
is there's this connection between the physical world and the digital world, the blockchain world, and how you're connecting those things. So it's just as an example, voting. It's like it's really good to an idea for you to do blockchain-based voting, but in order to do that, you need to have digital identity,
Yeah.
which itself is its own logistical problem that maybe blockchain doesn't particularly solve.
Yeah.
So I would just couch any type of low-hanging fruit that you're really considering what information is being pulled into the chain and how blockchain-related processes, etc., are then able to monitor results or actions taken that are based on the information outside of the chain.
Got it. So blockchain is an application with all the apparatus around it. I think that one's a little long. Hey, can you pick a one that would be sooner?
I don't know if this is, one thing that popped into my head is just, document authentication, particularly around like credentialing and diplomas, and just coming from my background being executive office education. One bill that I worked on in that space, the legislature really led on at the time as well, was around small colleges that were closing precipitously and having to shut their doors, and then the state becomes responsible for all the records, and if someone decades later says, I need a copy of my transcript, or, that's such a conundrum.
That's a
so
great
possibly blockchain for that.
Great one. Are we stumping you or?
Mine is going to sound like a copy paste, but it's a little different since you're here in the city of Presidents, and I'm sort of an amateur historian myself. Historical records. If you're ever doing any historical research, I don't know how profit-making this would be, but it would be benevolent certainly to use blockchain technology to be able to track all the letters that we have. Commonwealth, Digital Commonwealth has it, does a great job. Using that, combine those two, I think would be a great application.
Yeah. Ian?
So I got one for public and one for private. One for public would be DeFi for bond market. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Allow people to participate in funding local, state infrastructure and other types of projects. And then the other one would be DeFi for small businesses.
Excellent. Mine would be supply chain management, being able to track and support our supply chain. I just want to thank the panel. This is a tremendous group. Okay, thank you. Excellent. Sam,
I'll go back to my host right now.
Ian started us. I had nothing to do with it.
Thank you, Kate.
Yeah, it's good to see you in person.
So we're about 10 minutes ahead of schedule, so we're gonna cut to a break. We can have some refreshments. 3 o'clock, we've got the Townsend food truck, and they've got opportunities for refreshments as well as the Widowmaker Brewing truck as well. We've got snacks and refreshments back here, soft drinks and such. Please make yourself comfortable, interact. We'll be back on probably around 4. Thank you very much.
Thank you.